What if the only way to stay in the country was to marry your terrifying boss? No, seriously, that's the whole plan. And honestly, it might be the most chaotic, most hilarious, most accidentally romantic plan in the history of bad ideas. Welcome to The Proposal, the 2009 rom-com where Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds prove that fake love and real feelings can absolutely get you into some very awkward situations in Alaska. Buckle up. This one's a wild ride. Meet Margaret Tate. She's the executive editor at a big New York publishing house, and she runs that office like she runs everything in her life. Fast, cold, and with zero patience for nonsense. Every single morning, her employees get a warning text that she's in the building. People grab their coffees, straighten their ties, and pray they didn't make a typo in their emails. And her assistant, poor Andrew Paxton, played by the absolutely gorgeous Ryan Reynolds, has been putting up with her demands for 3 years. 3 years of getting her dry cleaning, fixing her coffee, and being basically invisible while she stomps through the office like a queen who's late for everything. Andrew is smart. Andrew is talented. Andrew wants to be an editor himself one day. But right now, Andrew is Margaret's human Google Calendar. And then one perfectly terrible morning, everything changes. So here's where things go completely off the rails. Margaret gets summoned into her boss's office and handed the most inconvenient piece of news possible. Her work visa has expired. As in, it ran out. As in, nobody caught it in time. And because of this, she is being deported back to Canada and banned from re-entering the United States for an entire year. Now, for a normal person, this would be a moment of panic, tears, maybe a strongly worded phone call to an immigration lawyer. But Margaret Tate is not a normal person. She walks back to her office. She looks directly at Andrew. Poor, unsuspecting Andrew who is just trying to get through his morning coffee. And she says, completely calm, completely composed, "We're getting married." Andrew stares. The office goes quiet. A few jaws might have dropped. She lays it out like a business proposal. If Andrew agrees to marry her, she keeps her job, she stays in the country, everything continues as normal. And in return, Andrew finally gets the book editor promotion he has been quietly working toward for 3 long years. It is transactional. It is efficient. It is completely absurd. Andrew absolutely wants to say no. Every single rational thought in his brain is screaming no. But Margaret leans in, quiet, steady, completely serious, and makes it very clear that refusing is not exactly a safe career move either. And just like that, they're engaged. Sort of. Congratulations, we think. Now, if you think the hard part was convincing Andrew, think again. Immigration doesn't just take your word for it when you show up and announce you're suddenly engaged to your assistant of 3 years. A sharp, no-nonsense immigration officer named Mr. Gilbertson pulls Margaret and Andrew in for a formal interview. Separately. And the questions are ruthless. What is her favorite food? What side of the bed does he sleep on? What does she wear to bed? What is the first thing he notices about her in the morning? They fumble. They hesitate. They give completely different answers. It is painful to watch and also a little hilarious. Mr. Gilbertson is not impressed. He tells them point blank, if this engagement looks fraudulent, Margaret gets deported and Andrew faces federal charges for immigration fraud. Federal charges. Suddenly, this little arrangement has some very serious consequences attached to it. And then, because life has a wicked sense of humor, Andrew casually mentions that his grandmother is turning 90 this weekend in Sitka, Alaska, and the whole family is gathering. Margaret's eyes light up immediately. A whole family trip? Real people? Real memories they can reference in the next interview? Andrew instantly regrets saying anything. But it's too late. They're going to Alaska. They land in Sitka, Alaska, and if New York is a triple espresso, Sitka is a warm mug of tea on a porch with a view of the mountains. Andrew's family is everything Margaret is not. They are loud and warm and genuinely, overwhelmingly happy to see them. His mother wraps Margaret in a hug, so sincere it seems to confuse her on a biological level. His grandmother, the legendary Gammy, played by the one and only Betty White, grabs Margaret by both hands and tells her she's beautiful and she's been waiting for this day for years. Margaret stands very still and smiles in that way where you can tell smiling is something she has to consciously remember to do. It is painful. It is adorable. It is everything. Meanwhile, something interesting happens to Andrew the moment he steps off that plane. The tension drops out of his shoulders. He laughs easier. He jokes around with his dad. He seems like a completely different person, and Margaret is quietly, maybe unknowingly, taking all of it in. And then comes the reveal that nobody expected. Andrew's family is not just comfortable. They are wealthy. Like, his family basically owns the town. Multiple businesses, deep community roots, the whole picture. Margaret had assumed Andrew was just a hard-working city kid chasing a dream. Turns out he walked away from all of this to go build something of his own in New York. She doesn't quite know what to do with that information, but she doesn't forget it either. Now let's talk about the scene that makes this movie absolutely iconic. Gammy, 90 years old, completely fearless, and operating on pure chaotic love, decides to perform a full ceremonial blessing for the happy couple. In the woods, in costume, with dancing, and absolute commitment to every single moment of it. Margaret stands there in the middle of the Alaskan forest, surrounded by trees and firelight and the sounds of nature, watching this woman pour her whole heart into a dance meant to celebrate a love that isn't even real. And something inside Margaret just cracks open a little, because nobody has ever done anything like that for her. Not once. Later, there's a quieter moment. Margaret and Andrew are alone, and they actually talk, not as boss and assistant, not as two people running a scheme, but as two human beings. She tells him things she hasn't told anyone. About her parents, about growing up lonely, about how she built those walls around herself so high and so thick that eventually she stopped noticing they were there. And Andrew listens. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't judge. He is just present with her in a way nobody has been in a very long time. Now look, we all know where this is going. The movie isn't exactly hiding it, but it earns every single step of the journey, because Reynolds and Sandra Bullock have the kind of effortless chemistry that makes every scene feel genuinely alive. Every argument, every awkward silence, every almost moment. You feel all of it. Back in New York, the immigration interview is looming, and Margaret is falling apart on the inside. She has watched Andrew with his family. She has seen the life he left behind, the warmth he carries, the kind of person he actually is when nobody is ordering him around. And somewhere between the campfire and the lakeside conversation and Gammy's absolutely joyful blessing, she has gone and fallen for him. Real feelings. Terrifying, inconvenient, completely unplanned real feelings. And because Margaret Tate handles emotions the way most people handle a live grenade, very carefully, and then by throwing it away, she decides the only right thing to do is to end the whole thing. She walks into the immigration interview, sits down in front of the officer, and confesses everything. The deal, the promotion, the fake engagement, all of it. She takes complete responsibility and makes it clear that Andrew was a victim of the arrangement, not a willing participant. She is ready to be deported. She is letting him go. She is doing the right thing. And for a long moment, it really does look like that is the end of the story. Andrew watches her walk away, and then something shifts in his face. He goes after her, through the streets of New York City, which, if you have ever tried to move quickly in Manhattan, you know is its own kind of obstacle course. Andrew chases her down. He finds her, and he tells her, standing right there on the street, that this has nothing to do with the visa or the promotion or any deal they ever made. He tells her he loves her, the real version, the messy, unscheduled, nobody planned for this version. Margaret, our ice queen, our untouchable publishing titan, our woman who schedules her emotions like meetings and cancels them just as easily, looks at him, and she smiles. A real one, the kind she forgot she was capable of. They kiss. The music swells. Gammy, somewhere in Alaska, probably already knows. The proposal is funny, warm, a little chaotic, and completely irresistible, just like the best rom-coms always are. That's the proposal, and it is, without question, the best fake engagement we have ever had the pleasure of watching. The story doesn't stop here. Subscribe to Ken 10 Minutes Recap, and catch the next recap before everyone else does.